You ready? Yeah. So I'm Ollie Newton, and I lost 10 years of my life to severe OCD, anxiety and depression. And the problems I had back then have forged a path now where I'm in a position to really help other people. Over the last kind of 4 or 5 years, I've been in an amazing position where I can share my story to hundreds of people at different organisations as a speaker. And on the back of that, I trained as a mental health first aid instructor through the mental health first aid. And I run bespoke mental health workshops in colleges and schools and talk to thousands of people across the UK. And I'm really, really proud and pleased to be here today with Will, who reached out to me a couple of weeks ago, and it's someone who I've known for a long time. And I think, you know, it's important that we get Will's message out there today. So, how you feeling?
Yeah, I feel fine. As some of you know, I'm Will Brown. I own Will Brown Hair, and I reached out to Ollie a few months ago now, who was shocked by my story. But I reached out to him because I wanted to share my story and share my experiences, but I wasn't sure, one, how to do it, two, how it would come across, and I wanted to share my experiences that you can still be a successful husband, father, son, family member, friend, and businessman and employer, all of these things that I kind of categorize my life into. I feel like I need to share, to take off my mask and explain why things haven't been completely rosy to get from A to B.
Yeah, I think it's and you know, I agree. It shocked me totally when you reached out to me. You know, of all the people, you know, we look and we talk. You know, we know need to refer through family. Our parents are good friends, and you know, on the outset, it always looked to me like, you know, he's loving life, is you know, he's doing amazing things, and he clearly are. But you know, you've obviously been fighting this battle, like you know, for a long time now. So what is it?
So the things that I've been diagnosed with is OCD, anxiety, depression, which off camera a minute ago we were talking, all three kind of bounce off each other. The thing I remember from the youngest point of my life, my longest living memory, is having OCD. So back then there wasn't a title for it. There wasn't it was probably more of a stigma attached to it than a title. It was, ever since I was 3 or 4, I was lining toys up in size order. If someone come and crushed that order, it would ruin my day. I was constantly cleaning. I was constantly putting things into straight lines. I'd go into shops and I'd go and tidy their leaflets up for them, their magazines in the magazine rack, because that to me wasn't right. As I got older, intrusive thoughts came into that. So
I can totally connect with that. And you know, for me growing up, having a lot of them traits, but also, you know, what the reasoning behind them. And I think we've chatted about this, and we both have that same thing. It was, you know, we both felt like if we hadn't, or we didn't do them things, that you know, someone was going to die, or you know, we're going to lose a family member. And it was all about keeping people alive ultimately. So and the little you, the young you, will have been thinking, it's, you know, if I don't do this, you know, it's not just a case of that has to be like that. It has to be like that, because if it doesn't, then that is it, isn't it?
And the worst phrase you can hear is, oh, I think I have OCD, or, oh, he's a bit OCD. You're not a bit OCD, you are OCD.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a bit kind of flippant almost to hear that. And I always feel like I have to explain myself that, oh, I've been diagnosed with it, so I actually have it. But it's not that. It's the thoughts that go with it.
Absolutely. I think people don't realise the darker side of OCD. You know, it actually ranked in the top 10 most debilitating diseases in the world. You know, in way of loss of life and loss of earnings, and people don't realise that. And I think that it's so often trivialised. There's this misconception in the media about OCD as a whole. People think it's, you know, tidying up, and you know, my wife wishes I was tidy, but unfortunately, it's not always the case. And that's what people think, is people are cleaning all day. And, you know, companies like, you know, even like over the last couple of years, I've seen OCD on jumpers with obsessive Christmas disorder. And it's just not something that's, you know, it's not understood. And how I see it, and, you know, I've been sharing my message, like, you know, far and wide, and trying to educate people on OCD. And I don't always believe that actually it's that person's fault. So it is It is, people lining the computer screens up at work all the time. I'm a little bit OCD. But actually, it's for us, it's frustrating because that is something that's, really, really damaged our lives.
Yeah, and if it's debilitated you, then that's more than just adjusting something, isn't it? Because you quite like that there.
Yeah. But, how has it impacted you? Like, tell me about, when did the intrusive thoughts start to come? Because that's obviously that's OCD, it's worse.
And I think I probably always had them, definitely as a teenager. I remember having them. They were exacerbated 100 times when I became a dad, because I had a protection and I had somebody else to look after. So my traits have always moved on. So it went from cleanliness, neatness, all that sort of thing, to locking windows, shutting and checking them. But at 2-3 o'clock in the morning, I'd go downstairs because I feel like I haven't checked them, even though I checked them at 10 o'clock when I went to bed. But that was a security thing, because I was making sure my family was safe. And if I didn't do them, my family would ultimately die if I didn't do it.
Yeah, and that is it. And it's okay. Did you find that having to go back down and do them again, that would actually start your whole routine off again? So you're almost, because that is the most difficult for me.
And when you're down, I'd probably find something else to do.
So for me, like breaking that chain, and once getting upstairs actually was, as a kid for me, I remember checking my wardrobe for monsters, and I at a very young age, and then that started with checking it once, then all of a sudden I was doing it 10 times, 20 times, and every time I made a mistake, I'd build that further routine into the nightly ritual. But like, that is the worst thing, when you think something, have you forgotten to turn the cooker off, have you forgotten to do this, and then all of a sudden it isn't just about that act is your thing of keeping everybody alive, keeping everyone safe, and no matter what happens, you cannot change that thought process.
No, 100% that it's the debilitation. But on the other hand, I do believe it has helped me create the business I've wanted to create. I've always wanted to be a businessman and have my own business. So I have luckily been able to spin it, more so the last few years, but spin it as a positive. I can be meticulous. I can meticulously plan and have everything in order. Later we'll come on to it. I don't follow through with those orders, but the obsessiveness with time structure, when I was doing the salon, getting the builders in at this time, that time, and if I didn't do that, the things that would come with that, but using it as a positive, because it's not always negative. You've got to, these things don't go, you learn to live with them, and if it's going to be with you, if you're going to have this little thing on your shoulder telling you to do something, it's about living with that, and you being in control of that thing on your shoulder, and not that controlling you.
I couldn't agree more. And where's it taking you to? So like, what sort of like levels have you got to? So have you, what kind of thoughts have you had? Have you got to a stage where you really feel like you can't go on with this? And has that ever come into?
Yeah, and my worst was April 2019. I'd never spoken about anything, and that is the biggest issue. Never spoken to a single person about the way I've always felt. And I went on a dog walk. No one knows this. I went on a dog walk. It was me and the dog, and I saw a tree, and that was the tree I was going to hang myself on. Because I wasn't a good enough dad or a husband. And then until I spoke to Rosie, my wife, who has been the best thing ever, you realise that you are good enough, and you realise that you're a good dad, you're a good husband, and everything I've always craved: marriage, children, house. I had a Range Rover. I had everything kind of in a relative term, everything I've always wanted. But why wasn't that enough? And it was a constant question: why wasn't that enough for them? But ultimately, it was.
It was enough for them, but deep down for you, it's just everything that you've got going on in your head, and the thoughts, and the constant control. The fact it can be so, it's one of the most debilitating diseases around, and it literally consumes your day-to-day life. You cannot see past these thoughts. You cannot see past these rituals. You cannot, you can't do the normal things, and everything that you want to do takes twice as long as everything else, because, you know, even like leaving a house, it's not the same, is it?
Yeah. No.
And that is what it drives you to. And it does. And you know, unbelievable for you, you know, opening up. We've not probably shared this with anyone.
No, only Rosie knows that. So it's a big thing for me. But I suppose,
I think the importance with this is, in this industry you work in, you know, it's not an industry I'm familiar with, but I go to my hairdressers. I've got no hair, and I get my hairdresser to shave my hair every 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, because I love the guy. I speak to the guy, I can have a conversation with him, and he just, you know, he listens. But you are one of these people. You probably speak to hundreds of people every single week, and they share all their problems with you, and they just think he's got everything he needs in the world. Do you know what I mean? He has no problems, no worries. But it's important that they know that you do, so then you can open these conversations.
That's ultimately what I've reached out to you for, was how do I tell these hundreds of people a week, thousands of people a month that come into the shop, tens of thousands in a year probably, individually, that I see and I say hello to and I wave to and say, have a lovely Christmas, have this, that and the other, that actually there's always something else possibly going on behind the scenes. And I just felt like people needed to know that.
Yeah. For me, it's just, you know, it's a real honour to be a part of this journey with you, and I'm grateful you reached out to me, and I know that you know, you've said some really great stuff and you've kind stuff, and I believe that what you can do here in an environment, in a hairdresser's, where you've got all these people, and we don't want everyone to come and suddenly think you're a therapist and come and, you know, offload everything to you, but you want them to know the truth, and you want them to feel that they can talk to you about these things. And you know, a lot of people probably already do, and you just sit there and it's like, where do you go from there? Like, what's your plans with the business? Like, where do you feel like you can go next with this? Like, what's the...
So I want to provide mental health first aid training for all of my staff, and if other salons want to get involved through us and get on board with the training, I'd love to help them do that.
And I'd love to support you with that. So it's going to be brilliant, something we can do together after this, and, you know, training them up through the MHFA, Mental Health First Aid England. There's, you know, it's the gold standard, it's the best course out there, and you know, equipping your staff in that way, ultimately, you know, you're creating a much safer environment, and an environment where people feel they can talk, they can speak openly about mental health, and make it a place where people can, you know, take away that stigma that's still there, isn't it? Ultimately,
I think it was 3 weeks ago, the night before Christmas Eve, was diagnosed with ADHD. That's because of you. You pointed me in the right direction to the right people. And as soon as I got the diagnosis, I've been on my medication for a week. So it's really early days, and I want to be able to share where I am in 6 months' time or a year's time doing this sort of thing again. But speaking to the ADHD therapist and getting that diagnosis, it felt like a weight off my shoulders. It explained, it wasn't an excuse, but it explained my
childhood as well.
My childhood, my teens, my adulthood, and the way I am now.
And I think back then, actually, when we were kids, when we were younger, it isn't quite like it is now, where there's, you know, parents really want their kids to know about, like, if they want the diagnosis, they're going to get the extra support, they're going to get the extra time in the exams, and they get, you know, but some parents might not feel that way, and actually
or recognise it.
Yeah,
because I did well at school. I wasn't the naughty child at school or anything like that. I just had really distractive,
couldn't focus,
all of these things. So you don't have to be the naughty kid who's bouncing off the walls. You can be the one who strives to do well, but there's so many things that go with it. I've only just learned all this. I don't know the ins and outs.
Yeah, so for me, I mean, I've been on a similar path. You know, I got my diagnosis of ADHD probably 7 or 8 months ago, and it's been an absolute whirlwind for me, like learning and understanding it. And actually, it's been a revelation, because, you know, back then I wondered why I was that kid. I wondered why I was going through all, you know, why couldn't I stay in lessons? Why was I so distracted all the time? And actually, you know, as I've started to kind of, and this is the reason why I just mentioned it to you about it. A few of the traits you said, you know, I'm not someone who can diagnose. I'm not an expert in that field, but, you know, I do believe with ADHD, it's important that, you know, you can get the right help, and a lot of people just kind of just sail through life without it. For me, you know, I found out that, you know, a lot of the stuff that I was going through, the OCD, and the ADHD were very much entwined. They were interlinked, and a lot of them they were almost feeding into each other. And the medication for me has allowed me to be more productive as a business owner. It's allowed me to think a bit clearer and actually manage my thoughts much better. And I'm not saying that's necessarily the case, but that's just my case. And I think it's important that people do reach out and they do find out about these diagnoses.
Yeah, because ultimately, if you don't reach out, you don't get any further down the line. That old saying of a problem shared is a problem halved is the most true saying I think ever.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter who you talk to. It doesn't matter if it's mum, dad, brother, sister, wife, husband, whoever it may be. Grab a stranger, grab your hairdresser, grab someone and just say, I've been feeling like this for a long time, or however long it's been. And I only can talk from my experience. The weight that just fell off of me when Rosie knew about what I was going through, I felt like a different person.
No, and that's worked for you then. That's been beneficial. And I think it's normalising these conversations. And the more people you speak to, it's like we've spoke about multiple things, when we chatted having a drink earlier. We were talking about things and you were like, actually, that makes sense. And that's simply because you've opened up and had these conversations, which you're not used to having. And it's important, that you do have these conversations. We talk about, the support that's available, like when we talk about them through the mental health first aid England, through the training, it's not necessarily just, professional help. There's all these incredible support groups that people can reach out to. There's an incredible website and app called Hub of Hope that we speak about so highly. I speak about it in all my talks too. And it's simply just a case of putting your postcode into a search engine, and it tells you everything that's in your area, whether you're dealing with issues with PTSD, eating disorders, OCD, anxiety, depression, everything that will be available to you. And these things are all available, and that is the reason that it's so important, because there's this movement now. There's a massive shift, and there's loads of these little support groups that actually benefit people more than spending 10 minutes with a doctor and then having to wait years for therapy. That it's available there and then, and it's free, and it's all about them, and you sharing your message, hopefully, and I'm sure it will, is going to bring so many people together.
Even if it does one person, I don't claim to be. I'm just a normal person from a village who works hard.
Absolutely.
But if one person watches this video, whatever they decide to do, however they see it, one person goes and tells their GP or their mum that,
or even you
or me, that I felt a certain way for a little while, then I've done something, and that's ultimately all I wanted to do, and continue to do, and support my staff if they want to go down that road, and try and be the best person I can be living with these things. But I just felt it was important that people knew I had these things going on, because
I think through sharing your message, in turn, you're only going to help yourself as well. Like, you're going to learn more about this, and people are going to come to you and talk to you, and then you start to understand things better. Like the conversations, like I've said, it only takes a couple of minutes of conversation, then all of a sudden it's like, I'm not actually alone with this. Like, when you're in that situation, it just feels like you're the only person in the world. But
no one's alone. I believe there's someone everyone can talk to.
Yeah,
every single person.
I bet at one stage you might not have done, and I didn't. No. And ultimately,
I didn't even know I was. It got pointed out to me. So again, if you feel like a family member is you think they might be struggling with certain things, ask them. They might open up to you. They might not. They might open up to you a month later because someone's recognised the way they're thinking. But talk. It's the most. Everyone does a lot of talking online and commenting and all of this
for the
wrong
reasons.
For the wrong reasons, but just open your mouth and talk. It's an old school technique.
Yeah, exactly.
We're lucky in our industry that we talk all day long, so it should go hand in hand. But there's plenty of people that won't and don't, but they need to.
And I think one thing that I've learned is, like you were saying earlier, if you speak to someone about something, and they might be wanting to tell you the same thing too. The amount of times I share my story or bits of me before I've even, I don't drink, so people are like, who's this guy, why is he not drinking? So I'm like, I don't drink because I've got severe OCD, anxiety and depression. And they're like, really? And then they start talking to me, and then all of a sudden it's like, my partner's got it. And I think, it's difficult. Can you tell me what I should do? So it actually opens the conversations. That's the most important thing. And that's what you want to do.
Yeah, that's what I want to do.
And I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
Really proud of you, mate.
Thank you. Cheers, mate.